Hey everyone, welcome back to another video, and today I want to talk about the Halo TV series on Paramount Plus. And this is kind of a third episode thoughts video, because I know I haven't done one of those in a while, because I've moved the anime stuff over to a video essay format, which is coming. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss it. But today I figured I want to talk about my thoughts on the Halo series on Paramount Plus as it stands right now with 3 episodes. I think they're only on 3 episodes, at least at the time of recording. I've only watched 3 episodes. So if you're unfamiliar with my 3-episode rule, I've used it for years. It hasn't failed me yet. And the 3-episode rule is where I will watch the first 3 episodes of any show I'm watching indefinitely. I will watch all 3 of the first episodes. Even if the first one is utter garbage, I will continue to watch it all the way out to episode 3. And believe me, there have been shows where I want to just completely drop it after the first episode. Interspecies Reviewers comes to mind. Don't Google that. And if you do, turn Safe Search off. So to start out, when I watched this Halo series on Paramount Plus, I wanted to detach myself from the game. I've been a Halo fan for 20 years. I've literally played it since it came out, all the way back in 2001, and I know that an interactive story for a game doesn't translate well into a linear story meant to just be watched. So changing things up is fine. I don't mind if they change something up in the game, or rather change things up from the game, but it's got to be within reason. It still has to feel like Halo. So did they succeed? Well, for the first few minutes of the first episode, they did really well. They open up on Madrigal, which I know Madrigal is actually like an established location in the books that are related to the games, but also if you get the reference for Madrigal, going all the way back to Myth, which was one of Bungie's older RTS games, freaking great reference. I love that. And it has one of the best songs I think Marty O'Donnell has ever composed, which is The Siege of Madrigal. You should give it a listen. God bless that man. But either way, we open up with Madrigal, and we focus primarily on the insurrectionists for the first few minutes, which I think is actually really cool. The insurrectionists have obviously always been the bad guys in the books, but the leaders and their stories and generally how they're approached in the books has always been kind of interesting, and to see a focus on them kind of gave me hope. I was ready to eat my words about these first few episodes. Because keep in mind, even detaching myself from the game story and going into this sort of open-minded, I was still cautiously pessimistic just because the showrunner said that they didn't feel limited by the games, and we'll talk more about that later, but I fundamentally disagree with the term limited and the game being referenced. But anyway, I was ready to eat my words because the actual focus was really interesting, and I thought that it had a really good level of potential to give us something we've never seen before. And actually, interestingly enough, the first thing that we see that's familiar from the games isn't the Spartans or any Marines, it's the elites, and they're all obscured, and it's this horrifying assault on a group of kids running through the forest, and we get to see how effective these plasma weapons are on regular humans who aren't, wearing a ton of titanium armor. This show actually got really violent really fast, and I was super impressed, so kudos, you actually have more blood in this TV show than Halo Infinite had in its game. Congratulations. Then the Spartans show up, and the combat is surprisingly good. I mean, it's got some shortcomings. The way that they CGI'd in some guns, and the way that the Chief moved was kind of weird. And the first-person elements, yes, I know Halo's a first-person game, and you want to call back to it, but maybe leave it out. It's not super necessary, and it kind of breaks the flow of the action when you're watching it. Plus, that's actually not something that a player would be able to do. You'd be looking down through your feet if you jump over them. You're not going to be upside down aiming because, well, FPS games don't really work like that. But generally, aside from the plasma pistol being god-level overpowered, it was actually a really cool fight. I was interested to see how things went, especially considering that we got to see the Covenant just brutally slaughtering everyone. That was really cool, a really neat way to establish that, yeah, these are the bad guys, and they have no regard for human life, except for one, which, weird. Again, I'm not going to dive too deep into the story. If you're really interested, at least watch the first 3 episodes so you have context to some of the things I'm talking about. But overall, the first episode had me ready to eat my words, and then things got weird. Chief touches an artifact, and he recalls memories from his childhood because apparently they were repressed, which is a first big change from the story. Again, not having an issue with the change in the story if it's good. So far, it hasn't really shit the bed too much, so we'll continue. Then he defects and starts questioning authority, which gave me some Halo 4 vibes, Halo 5 vibes, and that kind of got a little weird. He takes one of the insurrectionists with him and runs away, and then she wants to be all badass with a gun and try to shoot him, and he wants to humanize himself. And then the biggest sin, and the moment where I stood up out of my chair and said, "You have to be kidding me." Instead of just manhandling this woman and keeping her from assaulting him or taking the ship down or stopping him from completing his mission, like a 7-foot super soldier could easily do, he takes his helmet off. So, I would have no problem, I'm saying this right now, I would have no problem with Master Chief taking his helmet off in this TV series if it was a payoff for something. Even Halo 4, Chief took his helmet off briefly and we saw like a little shot of his eyes. But that only happened, at least on the original 360 version, that only happened on the legendary ending. That was something that you got for completing a grueling task. In the show, if they want Chief to begin to become more humanized, perhaps they should have made the helmet coming off a payoff. Maybe as he's becoming more human, he finally learns to take the helmet off, become more of a human, face people through something other than his super protective HUD visor. Maybe that could have been the payoff. Instead of him just looking at this girl who he could have easily detained, strapped into a chair, and continued his mission, could have easily done that. But instead, he takes his helmet off. Okay, cool. Episode 1, mysterious guy with a helmet who seems to be completely inhuman, now totally humanized, right? No, because he still acts like a f***ing robot even with his helmet off, which is fine when the helmet's on, because the portrayal of Chief is very stoic, very straightforward. He says what he has to, he does what he has to, he doesn't question authority, he just does it. If you're going to do that with the helmet off, suddenly you just seem like a stale actor. No offense to the actor. I think that the way he portrayed Chief with the helmet on works perfectly, but continuing that acting with it off kind of shows me why Chief should probably never take his helmet off in the actual Halo games. Before I dive too deep into like my issues now, I do want to say that the actual art style, Chief's armor, the Pelicans, the UNSC equipment, High Charity, the Covenant, all these things look so good. I remember back when Halo 3 was still a thing, when we potentially were going to get a Halo movie, and it ended up turning into District 9, which if you get that reference, you are a hardcore Halo fan, so kudos. But I always remember thinking that Halo would look so good in live action, and we only really got glimpses of it in trailers. And those trailers would be things like the Reach trailer, Remember Reach, or the ODST trailer, which I did a whole video talking about like the different trailers and how good they are. You can check it out over there. But seeing that art style brought to life, aside from some janky CG, I am genuinely impressed. Seeing the Phantoms, I kind of want to just watch episode 4 for the chance to get a good glimpse at the dropships. We'll see. So yeah, the art style is good. Now we get into my critiques, and my critiques are going to be more general to the series because I feel like that's the best way to approach this. So like I said earlier, I took issue with the showrunner saying that they didn't feel limited by the game because they never played the game. The problem is that if you feel limited by a game franchise that spans 20 years, covers literally galaxies apart from one another, going to the edge of the galaxy to go to the Ark, or covering the 7 rings of Halo, or all these different colony worlds from Reach, Madrigal, Earth, all these different Octanus, all these places in this universe that have been established over the years of fully extended material in the game itself. You think that's limiting? All right. But even with them feeling like it's limiting, there's a bigger issue, which is the fact that they're making references to a lot of the things that have been established in Halo canon, which is fine, but they've made it clear that they want to approach a general audience. And again, I kind of have no problem with them wanting to approach a general audience, but the thing they have to keep in mind if they want to move away from the Halo story entirely, again, you can rewrite some of the stuff from the Halo games to be a good story for a TV show, but if they want to move away from that completely because they want to approach a general audience, that's a bigger issue, because you have to keep in mind When Halo 1 came out back in 2001, it wasn't this established monstrous franchise that it is now. It was a fresh new idea that was being dropped with a console that nobody had ever heard of, made by a company who didn't really have any reason to get into the console space other than the fact that they wanted to fight Sony. And this thing had to appeal to a massive general audience. And its story, its music, its characters, all of that, not counting gameplay, which also did, but the story, the music, everything else appealed to a massive general audience, which is why it is such a big franchise to this day. So keeping that in mind, that Halo CE had to appeal to a very wide audience, and successfully did due to the story and everything else, saying that you didn't feel limited by the game and that you wanted to basically make a totally different story so that it would appeal to a broader audience kind of feels like you're missing the point. Kind of feels like you didn't really do your research of the Halo game. And this is not true, because they did do their research for the Halo games to some degree, because there are references in this series that would normally, if the story was good, really make Halo fans really excited, but instead just kind of piss us off. Like, for example, they go to this asteroid colony that's actually a place in the books, and this has a really interesting story because it was established by Kigyar, the jackals, and humans together. And one of the founders is a jackal. And they refer to a character in this show as that character, as the jackal. But instead, he's just some crazy dude. And he's a human. Like, you make a reference to this character, to this world, to this established place, and yet you don't actually capture what makes it interesting. And I don't even want to get started with Cortana's introduction, because that pissed me off to the point where, yes, I am not continuing this series. 3 episodes, I'm done. Because the way that they characterized Cortana and Master Chief's relationship in the start is so wrong. Not wrong in a dirty way, wrong in the sense that they got it wrong. Master Chief and Cortana's relationship was not really a strained relationship from the start. Master Chief did approach her as a tool in the actual story, in the actual game. And yes, I'm calling it the actual story, whatever. But it wasn't as misunderstood or one-sided as it is in this show. Even just using Halo Infinite's introduction of Cortana. Chief asks, what do I call it? Halsey says she named herself, which is a characteristic, a trait of smart AI. They name themselves in this game, or in this franchise, because they are basically human brains made digital. Which they actually show and establish that Cortana is a human brain made digital, but they called it the Cortana Project, which means that it was always going to be called Cortana. She was always going to be called Cortana, which was not correct. Anyway, once that correction is made, the bond is sort of established by the trials that Master Chief and Cortana go through next before Operation Red Flag, which was one of the operations done on Reach during the Siege of Reach. I'm getting into the freaking story of Halo because this is important, so just bear with me. Once that connection is established, the bond is made, that sets the standard for how Cortana and Master Chief will interact for the rest of the franchise. And the wake of that established bond can even be felt during the strain of that relationship in Halo Infinite. That is how well they established that at the start. And to have Master Chief in this TV series treat Cortana like f***ing Siri pissed me off to the point where I'm just done. I'm done. If you're going to make references to something that is in a well-loved and established franchise that's going to get fans excited, you gotta actually understand why it would have gotten fans excited and not just throw it in for word. Throw it in for the word, the reference. It's so irritating. You reference Madrigal. Do you even know why Madrigal was called Madrigal in the first place? I don't expect you to, but whatever. You're going to make Cortana not fully a named smart AI, but yet she's still going to be a smart AI. You're going to have Chief not understand Cortana and think that she's just some other AI, but yet you're not going to have Halsey correct him and actually tell him what she can do for him in the battlefield? What the hell? And just making references for the sake of references is what will ruin any story based on an established and loved franchise with a rabid fan base. And yes, I understand that there are extreme Halo fans who can be very toxic, and I know that a lot of the people who are saying, oh, well, you just don't like it because it's not Halo, the game, are the people who are looking at these fans and critiquing them because they just want Halo brought to a TV show. And I understand that that's not something easily done. But I also understand that there are ways that you can take something that is as iconic as the original Halo story arc and change elements to make it feel more at home on the big screen or the phone screen that you're watching it on while sitting in the toilet taking a poop. I understand that they want to make something that appeals to a broader audience, and I'm not going to critique them for trying, but they also have to understand that Halo at the start also had to appeal to a broader audience on a game console and succeeded in so many ways that, unfortunately, I feel like this game franchise or show franchise is going to fail at. At the end of the day, I feel like this is a show where the writers just sort of took the characters that they were given from the Halo franchise and just threw them into a sandbox and said, let's just do what we can, and completely disregarded the larger elements of the franchise that made it so iconic to begin with and wanted to make something different, which is fine, but then they still want to just pull references from a book like they're making a Mad Libs catalog and throw it in there for the fans to get excited when the fans are already pissed off because you're not really giving Halo the credit it deserves, and you're not doing any justice to anything. So I did want to genuinely enjoy this show. I tried to go in with an open mind. Again, I completely tried to detach my expectations of this show from the game. But because they reference the game so much, and because they make references to the established elements of the franchise so much, but yet don't understand the references they're making, and the fact that they're mischaracterizing such iconic characters like Master Chief and Cortana, and that bond that has literally been an established bond for 20 years, the fact that they are mischaracterizing that and generally just completely going off the rails just makes me feel like the show is not going to improve. Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't been before with these 3-episode thoughts, at least not to my knowledge, so I'm going to drop it. You guys can continue it if you want, but I'm not going to finish this series. It's not worth it, which sucks because I paid for the year because I figured I would watch the whole show and then move on to something else, and I can probably burn through Picard in a long weekend. So, money not well spent. Lesson learned. But aside from that, yeah, those are my thoughts on the Halo TV series with as few spoilers as possible. Anyway, guys, that's it. Sorry for this bummer of a video. Hopefully you enjoyed it anyway. Make sure to like and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think. Have you seen it? Let me know. Either way, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Make sure to be there, and have a good one.